So we're just getting back from World Cup finals and streetcar super nationals, and really the only time we ran the car this year other than Texas 2K. But we had a lot of people come up and really ask questions about the MoTeC system we run, the M1, why is it good, why is it better, etc. Why do you need one of these expensive wire harnesses, and what these multiple keypads do in the car. So I kind of wanted to just take a minute and just take you through some of the features of how I set up our drag car. Everything from the wiring and pretty much the electronics package. We'll do a separate part that'll talk a little bit about what we log and why we log it, maybe looking at data software and that sort of thing. But right now I just kind of want to show people what the hardware looks like and how it functions. So let me just flip my camera here. Cutoff switch back here that most people have either through their bumper or through this tail light hole. That's how we previously had it. We can simply just run a toggle switch on here, and that powers up the relay that's inside this box here for the battery. Everything's protected. This is a 16-volt system, and it just takes a simple latching button here to turn the system on or off, and that makes it for a safety feature, and it's also for a convenience feature. Anytime we want to look at the car between rounds, we just hit this button, turn it off, turn it back on. We also made it so we can charge the battery externally outside of the car, so we never have to get into this at all. But since it's 16 volt, we do have to charge the battery every round. So we made our battery charger hook up underneath the car, and it actually comes to the side of this box here through one of these auto sports. So if you want to kill the charger, you can just disconnect these auto sports, screw them back on. Super easy. Get them lined up here, and they just go click. They're positive. Detent just clicks right in there. But moving over here, you see we put a second keypad in the car, and this gets a lot of attention. I was really surprised how many people come by while we're in the staging lanes or in the pits, and they're always pointing at this keypad and wondering, what the hell do they have a second keypad back here? Because up front you can see we've got the keypad that I use while we're driving the car, to fire it up and monitor things and make changes. I'll get into that in a minute. But as we service the car between rounds, we remove this cover, and then that gives us access to the air-to-water ice tank. So we're going to drain the system every pass and put fresh ice in it for the next pass. And the cool thing about that is if we want to cycle the water, all we got to do is hit this button twice, and that'll turn on the pump that runs for the intercooler. So you can hear that running now. Push it one more time and it'll turn off. The cool thing is too is I can turn on the electric water pump for the engine back here. So we turn that on, and that actually runs the water pump for the engine. If we push it again, it'll run the intercooler pump only. If we push it again, it'll run both. So if we're trying to cool things down between rounds, we don't really have to hook up an external fan or anything. We can just cycle these water pumps and run everything. We can do the same thing with the fans. So this first one will run the engine fan on the radiator. So with that and the water pump running, we can pretty much cool the engine down really quickly while we're getting towed back to the pits. Turn that off so I can talk. If we turn this one on and this one on, we can definitely cool off the engine while we're getting towed back to the pits. For example, at Streetcar Super Nationals, I'd make a pass, and the end of the pass, the engine temp would be around 180, and I would immediately turn these two things on using the front keypad, and by the time we got towed back to the pits, it'd be around 80 degrees when we're first pulling into the pits. So that's one advantage of the system. We can also just do a systems check back here. So when our guys are servicing the car between rounds, we always run this stuff and make sure that everything's operational, that a fan isn't shorted out or stopped working or anything like that. So that's kind of the fans and the pumps side of it. These get used the most. The other thing too is we can run the bottle heater for the nitrous back here. And the way I have it set up is you can view, not very good on this video, but you can view the nitrous pressure from the back of the car. So you can turn this on and off and turn the heater on. You can also purge the system. If we close the bottle and we're done racing for the day, nobody has to climb inside all this roll cage and get to that front keypad. They can just simply come back here and empty the system. You can do it, you strap it in the trailer and you forget to purge it, bang, you can purge it there. If we want to check between rounds, if we've overheated the bottle and we're getting ready to set pressure, we can do it here. So super easy. The next I'll get into in a second, the cockpit. This will run a dome light up front. We've got that unplugged right now, so I won't show you. But we can also dim the dash. So that's the brightness. That's the dim. The dim shows up better on these videos. But also here, this is a Pdm Reset. So our Pdm system on the car is for program or power distribution module, and you don't have to have any switches, you don't have to have any fuses, and you don't have to have any relays. You can still use those things if you want to in conjunction with a PDM, but if we have a system or a circuit that's tripped, this LED I have programmed so it'll let us know. You know, if we've overdrawn the current on a fan or a nitrous solenoid or something like that, we can hit this, and this is like resetting all the fuses in the car or in the PDM system. So if we're servicing rounds and one of these lights is on, we're going to know that we tripped a fuse or a circuit in the system. So we're going to want to go ahead and check that out. We're going to try a reset first of all. If that doesn't clear the LED, then we're going to look at data. We're going to see which power circuit was tripped. You know, maybe it's a water pump, maybe it's a fan, maybe it's, like I said, nitrous solenoid or something else. Maybe it's the ECU, but we can trip it and reset it all through here. So that's kind of what the rear keypad does. A lot of people are always wondering, why do you need a second keypad, or what do you do there? What's it used for? The cool thing is my guys can come back here, they can service the whole car. They don't need to climb into the front area at all. They can run the water pump, run the fan, run the trans fan, run the intercooler pump, get the ice circulated, empty the ice, charge the battery, and never really have to get hanging cords over all this or anything else. So it just makes the serviceability super, super easy. Next thing I'll take you through is just kind of the cockpit controls. Jump in the car here real quick. So we're sitting back here in the driver's position. This is a MoTeC C127 dash. And this also has our display creator set up in it. So the cool thing about these dashes is you can do what's called display creator and basically create your own custom layout of whatever it is that you're trying to view up on the screen. Of course, the MoTeC dash comes with templates, but sometimes that doesn't meet everybody's needs. So I'll take you through all the screens that I created on this. We find value in all of them, but some of them we use more often than others. So this is kind of the main screen. This is the sensor data. We can make this brighter. Well, that makes it worse on the video, so I got it dimmed right now. So this is just kind of criticals. We've got all 6 EGTs on this car. We've got our Lambda sensor here, which is warmed up. The car's not running, so it's pegged at 20.0 Lambda. And we just want to know RPM, coolant temp, oil temp, air temp, all these things. It seems like we're always wondering what they are. So any critical things we put on this particular screen. Oil pressure, you know, what the map sensor is looking at for ambient pressure, as well as where it's idling, what our fuel pressure is set to. We can check and make sure our throttle's working. Right now we don't have the throttle hooked up, but you know, that would go 0 to 100%. Before I make a pass. You know, that's critical to making our nitrous systems work, because a lot of that has throttle logic into the control of it. A lot of times we'll have the car on jack stands. We can easily rotate the front wheel and get our ground speed. We can rotate the drive shaft and get our drive shaft speed. And then we've also got GPS speed on this particular page, but it's probably not that relevant right now. The nitrous pressure is because we're going to heat the bottle between rounds, and so this is, you can actually view this from the rear of the car. So all of our guys that come in and help during these races, I'll tell them heat the bottle. It's all automated. You just turn the basically as soon as you crack the bottle open and we get over 400 pounds of nitrous pressure, it's going to automatically run the heater, and it's going to run it all the way up until the pressure that I have set that we want to make a pass at. So that stuff's always ready to go. Pretty easy to monitor, and this is kind of the overall screen that we look at. If I come down to our keypad here, I can just hit next, and this will rotate to our next screen. So this is the Pdm system, and this will show us, how much our current draw is with anything running. If I turn on the low beams, it'll show you that both those low beams is taking about 11.5 to 12 amps, and it's giving us a total amperage down there at 14. I can turn a water pump on here with this keypad. I can turn on the intercooler pump, or I can turn them both on. And we come back here, and that's going to tell us what those are drawing. The water pump for the engine's drawing about 7.5 amps. The intercooler pump is drawing about 8. We can just turn this off. Now the thing about this is, generally in like a NASCAR thing, or a typically wired race car, you're going to have a bunch of switches that you got to hit. You see these guys on Street Outlaws and stuff, and they're reaching up here and they're hitting a bunch of switches, or they forgot to turn their nitrous on, or they forgot to do this before the burnout, or whatever. The cool thing is about all this, we do have to arm the nitrous before we make a pass, because you're not always going to be using it. Maybe you don't use it for the burnout, maybe you're on the dyno. So I make that so I have to arm it. But everything else with the water pumps, the intercoolers, and the fans, and the trans fans, and all that, it's all automated. It all comes on with temperature based. The water pump will come on as soon as the engine's running. The fan will come on as soon as it's at 180 degrees. The intercooler pump is running as soon as the engine is running. And the same thing with the fan. The radiator fan here will turn on as soon as the engine's at 180 degrees or 170 degrees. And then the trans fan is the second one here. You'll hear a different note there. And that will come on when the trans temp is about 190, I believe, is where I have that triggered. So we can turn these things on this screen. That'll tell you how much our trans fan draws, our water pump, our intercooler. And if I got all that stuff on going down the track, I'm at about 33 amps worth of current draw without the engine running. So you can figure that the M1 system and some of the other things are going to probably draw another, 15 amps or so. Then if you need to put your headlights on, you can turn all this stuff on and know that your total current draw on a PDM is around 110 amps. And we don't get anywhere near that. We get around 65 or so. So that is with the lights on, going down the track, and all the fans running. So obviously, with it being a total loss system, that stuff is important, because the battery could die and you'll be shit out of luck on your race, I guess. So the other thing to look at here is the keypad. The cool thing about keypads is you can program all this stuff. Some of these are toggle buttons. So this turns on my M&W ignition, and the car won't start unless that's on. But if I want to rotate my starter, I can just hit that anytime I want and turn the starter over to do a compression check or what have you, or to crank things over and build fuel pressure or oil pressure in the system. But let's say I want to do that and not have the engine running. So I can easily do that by keeping this off. So as I'm going down the track and I want to kill the car, I can also just reach over and hit that, and that'll shut the system off. That's also an engine run switch in the M1, so it'll stop firing the injectors and the ignition outputs, as well as it's used for the wake up for the M&W ProDrag CDIs that we run in this car. So some of these are momentary, so I can just push it once and I let go and it turns it off. So like our purge, we turn on, turn off. As soon as we do our burnout, we go up to stage the car, hit the purge, let off. It doesn't stay on like this does because this is set up as a toggle. So we can also make these things count. So I count once here, I count twice here, I count 3 times here, and depending on how that count adds up, it can turn different systems on and off. The other thing that's really cool on here is we can change our launch RPM. So this is a momentary button, but it also counts for me. I can also adjust this button here to change how my bump box behaves. So a lot of people have to mount like a bump box here and turn the knobs and fine and coarse adjustments. In the MoTeC, you can wire your trans brake solenoid directly to your M1 and control it all through the system. You don't need to have different switches and things. You can just do it right here on your keypad. And if there's a button on here like this mode button, I don't use it very often. It's basically for like a burnout RPM limiter. If I want to use that for something else, I can just peel this sticker off, put a different sticker on it, do some programming changes, and now I've got a whole new button functionality. If this was a typically wired switch panel, I mean, you'd have to rip everything off, change, obviously you're going to change the label here, but you change your label, you would change the switch probably either from a rocker or a toggle or momentary or center off. You're going to have to remount things, you're going to have to pull new wire. You may have to add a relay, take a relay away. With a PDM and a keypad, you don't have to do any of that. It's just set up right away. It's all programming. This thing wires in with just 4 wires. So it has power and ground and the CAN bus. And the CAN bus consists of a CAN high and CAN low wire. So the CAN bus goes throughout this whole car, and all of the data from all the CAN devices, the M1, the C127, both of the keypads, the PDM, as well as our TC8 module for the EGTs, all of that data can be thrown around and utilized through different programming on the bus, and you can get super creative with the system. So let me go back and show you the rest of these screens. Come back here off our PDM screen. This is kind of the main race screen. One thing that I always loved about the Supra is the TRD tack, so I tried to emulate that. It's not an exact copy because I put gear position in it. As you can see, it's in neutral right now, but it does give you the look and feel a bit of a Supra while you're sitting in it. Obviously, we've got our logo in there. We've got our map sensor unplugged right now, so it's pegged out at 475 kPa as a default. Our coolant temp's at 70 and our Lambda sensor's pegged. But the cool thing is this is just stuff when I want to make a pass. This is kind of all I care about at this moment. I want to know where the bump box is set up, and I can move some of the duty cycle around for that. I've got GPS speed on here, but you know, I could easily put the rear wheel speed or the front wheel speed. Generally, I don't look at this as we go down the track, but you know, right at the end of the track, I might look real quick because this will hold the max value for a moment. And if I went 190 or whatever, it'll hold that for 10 seconds. I can look down and go, okay, well, we went that fast. So you kind of have a guess of what's going on. I also care about the nitrous pressure. I need to know that the bottle's open. I need to know that we're up to pressure. So it's good to have that there. And then, like I said, the launch RPM, I showed you this button here. You can easily push this and program this in the M1. I can go from 5,000 to 5,900 just by counting on this thing and pushing buttons. And if a couple of cars ahead of me are spinning the tires and I want to leave at 5,500, let's say I'm all set up to leave at 55, I can easily just go, you know what, 3 cars in a row spun the tires, let's try leaving at 54 or 52 or something, you know, just to go A to B and make it through a round. I mean, those things are valuable where in other systems you're going to have to say, hurry and grab me the laptop and log in and make a change, and that shit's just annoying. This is nice. I can make the change right here. I know exactly what my 2-step is at as I set it right before I make a pass. I don't have to think to myself, did I set it in the ECU right? Is it 52? Is it 55? Is it 6,000? Whatever the car wants to leave at that given point. You don't have to force yourself as a driver or tuner to remember. You can simply just dial it right here before you make your pass, and it's up here on your screen. So the next screen that I have here, this is some data around our M&M transmission. We use a 2-speed 400 in this car. Some people use a 3-speed, some people use a power glide. We kind of got something that's a hybrid between all that. The cool thing about this is it'll give me the engine RPM, but it'll let me know the line pressure inside the transmission, and it'll let me know what kind of converter or charge pressure we have. We also use an internal dump valve on the car, and if I hold the trans brake, it'll activate the dump, and I can physically see the converter pressure die off, and I let off the trans brake, and I'll see it build up while it's idling. So this is good because I can turn on the trans fan and it'll tell us how much current it's drawing. It'll also tell me what the pan temperature is in the transmission, as well as the fluid temperature coming out of the converter into the cooler and the fluid temperature coming out of the cooler back into the transmission itself. And all three of those things are pretty critical, because if you're simply just looking at the trans pan temp, you'll see a great delay in that, and you won't see that really equalize until you're kind of back to the pits. Even if you're getting towed, it takes a long time for that to equalize. And a lot of your trans builders, they want to know how hot it is coming out of the converter. They want to know how hot it is in the pan, because some temperatures are you know, more acceptable than others. So it's great if you've got all the data. It's probably not needed, but you know, in my opinion, it's better to know than to guess. So like they say, if you don't have data, you just have an opinion, right? So all right, so next screen. This one has to do with our CO2 pressures. We have a CO2 bottle that we run right here for the boost control on the car. This can also be used as an air shifter in the M1 package. This is critical because if you don't have any CO2, you're not going to go very fast if you're using it for boost control. So we want to know what the bottle pressure is up here on the left, and we want to know what the line pressure is. I can simply reach over here while I'm in the car and make an adjustment here on this regulator, and that will change our line pressure. You know, the CO2 pressure does change depending on temperature and usage, so it's important to know what the line pressure is before you make a pass, because if it's super low and you're trying to run, you know, 30 or 50 pounds of wastegate pressure to get your CO2 or to get your boost up, you need to make sure you got enough line pressure to do that, because if it's set at 20 or something, you're just not gonna make the boost you're looking for. So the other thing too is we want to make sure our G meter's zeroed. We do this in the C127 dash. We use the G meter that's inside the dash. It's actually a pretty good unit, and we send that data over CAN to the M1 so we have it for our log. So we want to make sure that all those, the long, the lat, and the vert is all zeroed out. The vertical we zero at 1.0 G because there is gravity on the earth. Everything else we zero out. We use that for data. We use that for setting up traction control and different things. So next screen is the GPS data. So here in Utah, we're about 4,600 feet at the shop or at my house here, and this gives us our latitude and longitude. So if you ever want to bring me a box of cookies, that's the GPS data. Cool thing about this is the antenna is actually hidden under our carbon dash way over there. And the cool thing about it is we pick up on 8 different satellites in the garage. If we're outside, we generally pick up around 10 to 12. This data isn't really that useful right now, but it does help you in a street car. I use these a lot to help dial in ground speed. The refresh rate on the GPS is only 10 hertz on this particular unit, so it's not real fast, but it does help you dial in some things. It does let you cross-check some speeds and that sort of thing. And if you lose a speed sensor, you know, the vehicle speed can always default to the GPS. So that helps it, you know, maintain speed if you're using that for any of your logic and the ECU, or you know, you're trying to figure out what point of the track you're going, how fast, whatnot. So as long as you kind of stay under, I'd say, a G of acceleration, the GPS data can be a bit useful. After that, it gets almost unuseful. So that's the dash 100%. We've got 3 lights on each side. You can program these individually. You can make shift points. You can make warning lights come on. I won't get into too much of that, but all of these lights are useful. Anytime that there's something wrong, you should be alerting the driver. The ECU should be alerting the driver. Best way to do that is through these shift lights, or the shift light module that's built into these C127 and C125 dashes. So real quick to run through this keypad. I kind of went through most of it. Obviously start the engine. This is our engine run switch and CDI wake up system. This runs the water pump.
for the engine and the intercooler. This runs the fans on the car for the engine fan and the trans fan. This is our headlights. If we get an alarm on the dash here, we can simply hit this and that'll make the alarm go away. That's our alarm acknowledge. This is our master arm for the nitrous. And this is our Pdm Reset. So just like in the back, if we have a fan fail or something like that, we can program it to retry so many times, but after so many times we can have it just stop trying, because obviously there's some sort of short or a motor's gone bad in a fan or a water pump or something. So we can repair the issue and reset the PDM here. I showed you the launch and the bump box stuff. All that's on the fly, so that's pretty cool. This cycles our dash around, so I can just hit this at any time and cycle everything around. Obviously our purge. This is our line lock for the burnout, so I can set a bunch of brake pressure here, come back, hold the line lock, and I like to run my line lock as a toggle. Some drivers like it momentary. I've always done it as a toggle. I can get on the trans brake, do my burnout, knock it into the next gear, and just simply reach up here and turn it off. So the mode button is set up for like a burnout mode. It's not something I use a lot of, but it's there. Like I said, we can get rid of any of these at any time and change them around. If it's during the day, I run bright. If it's at night, it's bright enough to run it on the dim. So some of those IQ3 dashes and stuff, they can be a bit bright and they come across with that big blue light. And that's all programmable of how dim we want to make this thing. We could black it out if we wanted to. We could have 3 settings on here. We could have 10 if we wanted to. We could make this count. I just have a high and a low, and as you see, it dims the keypad for me too. So the keypad LEDs get a little bit softer. And there's a backlight in here that you can't see in this video, but that also gets dimmer as I dim it out on the system. So other things. So this does have true gear position as I move my shifter around from park. What's cool about this is I use a line potentiometer or a line pot to record the gear position in the trans. Anytime it's in park or neutral, that plays into the programming of the PDM. The starter won't work if it's in the other gear. So like right now I'm in reverse and it won't let me start it. So that's a neutral safety feature that most tracks make you have. We put it into neutral. Right there's our clean neutral on this particular shifter, and it would start it. I won't push it, but
so I kind of cut that video off there, kind of showcasing the features of the dash and the keypad and all that. It was getting pretty long there, but really just kind of going into the functionality and the technical stuff there a little bit for everybody, because it seems like people want to see some videos of this stuff in action and how it functions and what the hardware does or how it's used in a car. I don't need a keypad or whatever. So we'll make some more videos. Our next one will probably be something around the wire harness in the engine bay, just kind of show you how that passes through the car, some benefits of it, how it's neat and tidy, and kind of some of the construction benefits of the strength of it and the materials used and whatnot. So again, thanks for sticking around for the video. Make sure and like and subscribe. We haven't done very many of these, but we will do more. Seems like more and more people are asking for video content, so you'll get to see my mug and listen to my voice a whole lot more in the future. So again, if you have any comments, shoot us an email at Cody@CodyPhillipsRacing.com, or you can check us out online, Facebook and Instagram at Cody Phillips Racing. Thanks again.